Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and congratulations, you made it through the week. This is your end of week video. So we'll talk about in this video today's performance, a little bit of shake and bake today in the price and the price action in the indices today. We'll go through that. We'll talk about what outperformed for the day, and of course, we'll go over this week's performance. I think there's some interesting things that kind of came out of this week's performance. So let's just sum up the price action for the indices. SPY finished down about 15 basis points, not much. Hughes finished down, and small caps, which have been really strong the last couple weeks, took a little bit of a breather today, down 0.5%. The VIX did climb today. We hit at one point at 25 in the VIX, but trailed off to finish. I think the VIX around 23, so I think that's a decent move in. I'll look at that chart in just a second. But let's go over some analysis first in the S&P, and a couple of things that I tweeted out earlier was intraday was that, hey, things look a little bit dicey here. Make sure that you're kind of paying attention to what price and trend are telling you. Now, we know that, of course, intraday is, of course, we look at this and we're trading intraday, but the closing print is most important. Right? You hear that from technical analysts a lot, that the most important print is the closing print, right? That's where you have all the information. So the S&P did close above support, so I view as very good, because if not, we kind of look like we were breaking down a little bit, right? And if that happens, what I tried to do is I tried to basically take the information that the market is giving us and process it and make some decisions based on that, right? I am strictly, well, not strictly, but I do follow the trend. I am a trend trader. So if the trend is starting to change, in the short term, because I do, depending on what your time frame is, my time frame is, I do have one account that I have long-term trading, and I spend a lot of time on my trading account, right? Which is more on the shorter term, trading side. So yes, I have to pay attention to if that short-term trend is changing or if we're just kind of coming in and testing support, which again is perfectly normal, right? And by the way, everything that we're talking about in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So as things kind of change, and so far I think we just have a little bit of a dip in the market, but things could change, and that is quite normal. Right? Sometimes you'll hear me go over these things and I talk about breaking support and so forth, but really, for the most part, we get little dips in the market, right? Every once in a while, we get something like we saw in September, right? And half of October, right? Which are a little bit longer dips. So that's kind of what I try to figure out as we're going along. And if I think that we're doing something differently, and if I think the short-term trend is changing, I do things. I try to really, really try to take off some positions and adjust with that. Maybe put on a hedge, right? So, I think that's very important. You hear me talk a lot about that in these end-of-day videos. And, the reason why I spend so much time on that is because that really separates, in my opinion, the good traders from the great traders, right? All day long, we see, setups being posted on Twitter, which is great, right? And that's a lot of what I'm doing too. I'm looking at various different single stock setups, looking at relative strength, and capitalizing on those things. However, it's so much more than that, right? The whole key is, and a lot of people are really good, I put myself in there too, at making money when the market goes up, when we're on an upswing. What happens, and I said this on Twitter earlier, is that a lot of people, though, when the market goes down, they also give it back, right? So that's why I really talk about, not only, trading, but also being a risk manager, right? I've mentioned this many times during the week. All right, so that's kind of where we're at. Also for the S&P, right? We are holding support. We did a lot of consolidation around this bottom of value today. Again, this is the 1 hour chart. So this value area is just for this week. Next week, we get a new value area. So I'll be concentrated on these levels, right? For the short term, right? And you could see that where price is right now, we're going to be right at that bottom of value. So depending on what we do Sunday night, Monday morning, and that is going to dictate how this short-term trend is going to go a little bit, right? So if we start to move, you can see right where my cursor is, right? That's call it 3650, right? If we start to move below 3650, we still have some volatility that's on our hands. If we start to break back above that, get back above this 200 period moving average, that's a better spot, and the market will continue to trend higher, right? We'll also kind of take a look at that VIX. Keep in mind the VIX got to 2025 intraday. So I mentioned I would go back to that VIX chart. So far, this is just, again, I think a garden variety type, little bit of a pullback, a little bit of move of higher in the VIX, and again, which I think these little pullbacks are quite normal. We just have to kind of take it for what it is as they occur and not give back too much of the gains. Another thing that I like to look is the VVIX, right? The VVIX did actually close close to the highs, so is it firing off a warning signal right this second? I think if we really start to move above the 200 period moving average, then we've got bigger volatility on our hands. But too early to really say yet from that, right? And I gave you that S&P level to watch, right? Now, another thing to mention, right? I talked about making money, of course, when the market goes up, and not giving it back as we as the market comes in a little bit. Notice where we are from where we were in the beginning of the month, right? We're basically unched, right? Here, this candle here is from the first of the month. We're plus or minus, I think, 1% or something like that. Here's an alert about Tesla. There you go. So the S&P does announce these changes after the close. Remember, quadruple witching is next week. So here's this. I just want to post this in the trading room. Apartment investment. So interesting. So that just hit the tape. All right, that is what's known as a red headline on Bloomberg, right? When you see this, Tesla to replace apartment investment in S&P index. All right, so I lost my train of thought there just for a second with the Tesla headline, but yeah, we're basically back to flat for the month. So if you are up for the month, you're doing a good job. Give yourself a pat on the back, right? You're doing good at managing some risk. If you're down on the month, you're not doing so good. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Qs, by the way, we didn't go over the technicals in the Qs. We're still holding above value, right? But notice too, just one day gets us erased all this little incremental move up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. One day, down 2.2% day brought us back down. And then of course we're kind of hanging around. But yeah, we're basically back to where we were to start the month. So and again, here's your top of value. Also, just to give you a little bit more perspective, notice what we did here in terms of the 1 hour chart. Right, we're basically right at the bottom. We closed right at the bottom of value. So again, the market webs. This is the indicator. This is a proprietary indicator that I use for Thinkorswim. It's called the market webs. We do offer it for purchase for Tribeca Trade Group members. But next week, the support is going to be. We'll have a little bit more room, but 300 will be the level to watch. IWM. Right, you could see a little bit of volatility today, but still, this looks like the strongest of the indices right now. Right, you can't even see the down 0.5% on this chart. Still holding all the short-term moving averages. Is it a little bit overbought here? Yes, the RSI is at 71. That is officially overbought territory, but for now it is holding trend. All right, guys, so that's a couple points that I wanted to make regarding today's price action. We didn't really go over the sectors here, but you could see the solar stocks. Industrials had some nice outperformance today too. I wanted to talk about a couple trades, and then we'll talk about this week's performance. But just a couple ones that I sent out a video earlier in the week for swing trade setup in Agora API. This is a Chinese software name, and made a really nice move today. So we hit one target with this. Again, what the market webs allow us to do. And if you like this type of trade management, I would suggest you sign up to be a member of Tribeca Trade Group. But you could see that the price action got right into this 1 hour Virgin point of control. That was a target for me. Notice we went a little bit higher, up to 48. So what do I do on these Virgin point of controls? I take a target, right? And then notice that we have a daily one here. So I will probably take this trade off at 49.50. Maybe leave a runner on, but that's the trade management with this one. A couple other names that kind of perked up today that I'm in. CPRT, nice move today, up 1.9%, coming out of a little bit of consolidation. Deere is another name that I talked about earlier in the week, also perking up there a little bit and holding support, which is 249.50. I'm looking for this thing next week to get through to get through value and to get to the top of value, which is up there at 264. One other new one is Reggie, right? So this is renewable energy. This was a name that was on our watch list to start the week. Didn't really do a lot. Sometimes you need what's called patience, right? Which is also a big thing in trading. This thing, and I talk a lot about setting alerts. This thing hit an alert today, and as soon as the alert triggered, I went ahead and took the trade. So we'll see. We could have another false signal here, but for now, I'm long this versus top of value. All right, and I'm looking for the breakout in this thing. Also, nice little volume on today's candle too. All right. So speaking of the watch list, how did we do for the week? Another week of outperformance for the TTG weekend watch list. So what are we doing with this? By the way, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, we have three things that I do. 3 different trading accounts. Sorry, not trading accounts. I have one trading account, but I do this watch list trade, right? Because every weekend I put together a watch list for members, and for most of the weeks that we've put this together, it's outperformed. So I said, hey, why not actually put a trade on for this watch list? And, for anybody who puts out weekend watch lists, if you do well, don't you want to be rewarded? So we've been doing this, right? And you could see the performance of this over time. I started this program. This is a new program, and I started this in August, right? So the beginning of August, and we're up 29%. We're up 29% in this trade versus the S&P up 9%. So again, all it is, and I have a couple videos on how this program works, but I buy the new watch list Monday morning, I hold it through the week, right? And then on Friday, today, I sell out of the watch list and I buy SPY, right? So it's like a program trade, right? And I'm using a program system called M1 Finance to go ahead. So it's just basically you're trading the whole portfolio. You don't have to trade the individual names or anything like that, right? You do have to set the basket up, but but up 1.9% versus the S&P down for the week, right? And again, this is the gain since I put the watch list together this weekend. All right, so that's we're doing pretty good with that. So again, this is not the performance of my trading account. This is just the performance of this type of trade that we do every week. So it's this one. There we go. One highlight. There we go. All right, so let's get into, we're about 14 minutes through this video. Let's talk a little bit about the week's performance, right? I said that I would bring that up as we do always on Fridays videos. Notice the performance last week. I always like to remember, maybe the last couple weeks, but last week was a very strong week. The prior week, Qs were up 2.2%, IWM was up 2.1%, emerging international was strong the week prior, right? So I'm looking at this line up here, right? This week, we had some give back. S&P was down 1%. Again, small caps remained strong. Qs were down 1.2%. Was that right for TLT? I might have that wrong. Sorry. Every once in a while, I do make a mistake. That can't be right for TLT. I think TLT was actually up. Yeah. Maybe I've got the direction wrong. So if I go 12.4, yeah, that's up 2.3%. A little error in there. All right, and this should be green. Yeah, so TLT had some outperformance this week, especially in the middle of the week. Best performing sectors, right? Solar came back this week. Interesting. The clean and the older energy both up close to the same amount this week. Steel names were very strong early on in the week. Biotech was strong. Chinese internets did okay today. So these are all the areas that outperformed. Some of the internet stocks did very well. Maybe not so much. The Amazon and the Facebook, but more so of the Snap and Twitter, Pinterest, those types of names. What else? Home builders were flat for the week. Interesting what happened here on the right side. Remember, semis had that strong move. I wanted to talk about one thing here. Again, I like to give a little bit of things other than just straight trade setups. But yeah, the SMH ETF really came in, right? Was the worst performer for the week after a big couple weeks of outperformance. So again, did it lose the trend here? No. But, it got really heated. What was the RSI? Right, the RSI was about a 78. So again, that's why I have these things on my charts. I think it's important for sectors as well as the major indices. Once they get above 75, watch out a little bit. Take some profits. One thing I wanted to talk about, one example that I wanted to give was with Skyworks, right? It's a good example for anybody who follows option activity or who thinks that option activity is the end-all and be-all. I use option activity. I'm busy during the day reading the tape. A lot of times I already have my ideas set, but I'm looking to see what the tape is doing, right? A lot of times my goal is to get into some trades before we see option activity, right? It's much more advantageous if you do your homework. You will find these setups before most of the option activity. Right? You'll notice that a lot of times. Now, why am I bringing up Skyworks? Well, because, and I put out a tweet about this, because it's a good example, right? We saw a lot of call activity in all the semis. Now, notice where this is from all the call activity. Most of the call activity, there was a little bit of call activity that started in here, and I participated in that. I used it as a trade idea, right? I say, hey, there's calls in Skyworks. I like this name, right? So I participated in this. However, they bought calls all in here, right? So it's important that you get out of, in my opinion, right? This is my opinion. You get out of this thinking that you hear all over Twitter about. It's the call activity is the smart money, right? They must know something every time there's an aggressive sweep on the tape, right? If they knew something, then why is Skyworks down this much, right? Why did it give all this back when they bought calls in here, right? And there's still, like, you can look at the open interest. There's still long January calls. They didn't unwind them all, right? So number one, I use option activity maybe a little bit different than everybody else, but I use it for trade ideas and I use it for momentum because there's no doubt you'll see momentum on the tape in the short term for that. But you got to get out of your head about it's smart money, because I'll tell you, if you don't manage these things and be disciplined with these trades, you got to take over from that point once you see option activity on the tape. And you have to be disciplined because no one is going to tell you what they're doing, right? So it's very, very important. In my opinion, there's way too much emphasis on when somebody buys calls, right? Because if you didn't time it right, if you didn't pick up on the first signal and you bought someplace in here and you didn't unwind in here, right? And you're still holding somewhere in here, that's a loss for you. Okay? So it's not as easy as everybody on Twitter says it is with the option activity. And I would say 90% of the time, they don't know anything. They're just trading momentum, right? There's 10%, like Disney is a good example, right? Disney went up huge today. Well, we did see a number of a lot of accumulation in Disney months ago, right? They were right? And they got rewarded. Whoever did that analysis, who really, went into Disney, back in here, they were pretty savvy, right? Pretty smart. Whether they knew something is a whole nother, is a whole nother thing. They could have just done some really good research and said, hey, this is a great opening stock. We know that Disney's doing something different. Who knows, right? But that's the way that you use the flow, right? You can say, okay, somebody's really positioning out in December and January in Disney. What are we thinking here, right? It's not just to jump in, because in my opinion, right? It's not just to say, okay, there's calls on the tape, I'm buying, right? Because we see that over and over and over. And I'll tell you, you got to have a better system than just straight up following. Right? So that's my little 2 cents about that. I hope it helps. I go over these things because I've been doing this for a while, and I know a lot of people who had a system that said, I'm just gonna trade option flow, and I know that they're not profitable traders doing that strategy. All right, so it takes a lot more than that. All right, so that's SMH. What also didn't perform very well? Retail, tech was down for the week. Consumer discretionary was down for the week. What was up in international lands? Russia, the UAE. So if you have a huge portfolio of Russia stocks, I say it every week, congratulations to you. Last week it was Greek. The Greek ETF was up huge. If you're long Greece, Russia, kudos to you. And on the flip side, what didn't perform very well? Local Chinese shares, they were down 4.5%. Remember, ASHR is very different than FXI. Local shares, right? Shanghai. Also, European financials got hit over the head this week, down 4%. A lot of Europe underperformed this week. All right, guys, so that's the performance for the week. Again, I think that's a good kind of recap. What we'll be doing, as always, is putting together our weekend watch list. I'm already seeing some interesting setups that I've got ready to go, so I'll be excited and enthused for next week. Again, if you are doing well this month now that the S&P and the Qs are basically almost unched for the month, you're doing a great job. All right, keep your head down, and if not, there's going to be plenty more opportunities for you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.